Thanks for joining us on Wellness Talk Radio. I'm Chris Costello. Listen in every Saturday at 5 o'clock on AM 1440 and AM 1410 and streaming live on the internet at www.am1440.com. Today we're talking with Dr. Roy Eskapa. Dr. Eskapa is a psychotherapist specializing in addiction. He is the author of The Cure for Alcoholism, an inspiring book written for professionals in the field of addiction sciences and for people struggling with the challenges of craving and addiction. Dr. Eskapa's adventures have included bringing this remarkable freedom from addiction using the Sinclair method to the rural poor in India and people around the world. Dr. Eskapa, we're so pleased that you could join us today.
It's a pleasure.
So I think I'd like to start out today by talking with you a little bit about alcoholism itself and just the history. You have a chapter in your book called The Human Cost of that.
Right. Yes.
You know, what is the human cost?
Well, alcoholism has been with us since ancient times, and it's caused problems not for everybody. The human cost on a worldwide scale is that 1.8 million people, according to the World Health Organization, die from it every year. And in the United States, about 105,000, according to the American Medical Association. It's a huge cost. It is the single biggest drain on society health-wise in the States. Costs almost $200 billion, $187 billion, which is equivalent to two-thirds of the Pentagon's 2003 budget. If you add up all the lost work days, the car accidents, the medical illnesses, the broken homes, it's a massive cost on society, a massive drain.
And that doesn't even get into the broken lives and the dysfunction that it creates for people, I would think.
Yes, broken marriages, families, abandoned children, drunken driving. It's huge. Mm-hmm. Absolutely huge. This is being studied by the U.S. government, by the NIAAA, which is the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Office of Applied Studies, SAMHSA it's called. And, they find data, for example, like approximately 7% of Americans aged 18 and older, at 17.8 million, have a drinking problem. Of these, 1.8 million are clear alcoholics way down the line. They've lost complete control over their drinking.
So how does one actually know that they're, where's that line with alcoholism?
It's not a very clear line. People generally get a sense of when they've lost control, and it doesn't seem to happen immediately. There are things like blacking out, saying things that they regret, feeling terrible, having terrible hangovers, feeling that they are craving alcohol. These are the main sorts of issues. It's not one day you're an alcoholic and then the next day you're not. In fact, nobody walks into a bar aged 21, orders a drink and is alcoholic, or steals it from their parents' cabinet and has the first drink and they're an alcoholic. It's something that's now generally considered to be learned. It's accepted that it is a learned phenomenon. And you have to, it requires two things to develop. You need to have a genetic predisposition, the biology, and you have to drink, not once, but many times and over much time. And then that produces the system in the brain, the biology of addiction, that keeps on driving it. It's very much like a new thirst is developed. We all are born with a thirst for water. If we're in the desert for 72 hours and we haven't had water and somebody puts water in front of you, it's virtually impossible to refuse it. The craving is overwhelming. And this is what happens eventually with alcoholics, with people who become addicted. The longer they abstain, often people try on their own and say, I won't drink tonight. And they don't. And they can go for a few days, but eventually, very much like dieting, they fall prey to the overwhelming urge, the craving, and they have a drink. Usually at that point, they drink far more than they would have. There is no clear line on what, when one is an alcoholic. There are lots of tests that are used, lots of questionnaires that have been developed, but there's no absolute clear line as to when one. It's more or less best to think of it as having lost control over one's drinking. And that can be fairly mild in the case of excessive social drinking, or it can be out and out clear alcoholism where people wake up at 3 in the morning to have a drink because otherwise they will go into withdrawal.
Right. I would think that if you find yourself thinking about it all the time, too, that might be a good clue.
Yes, that's right. When thoughts keep popping into one's head. And one of the things that this book addresses is the treatment reduces that. It removes the biology of the craving. It removes what we call it reduces the power of the opioid system, but we can get into that a little later. And people simply stop thinking about alcohol. They lose interest in it. It doesn't occupy such a big, important place in their lives.
And what are some of the myths regarding alcohol addiction?
One of the main myths is that alcoholism is incurable. That's a very big myth. And that alcoholism is something that people are born with. Those are some of the main myths. Generally, people doctors are taught and psychologists are taught, stay away from treating alcoholics. They are liars, they are incurable, and it is under their personal control. One of the big myths is that it's a voluntary thing. One of the first main myths, and this is a myth that is associated with medical doctors and psychologists, as well as the general public, is that it's an incurable thing. And once you're an alcoholic, you're always going to be an alcoholic. That's sort of a myth. It's actually true up until now, up until the Sinclair method, which is what the book is about. One of the other myths is that you have a weak personality, that it is an immoral illness. Very much like saying that leprosy is an immoral condition of bad morality and weakness. Alcoholism is thought of that way.
So kind of as a self-control, a willpower thing.
Yes. In fact, about 10% of alcoholics are able to stop on their own, which is why the traditional treatments, such as the 12 steps, AA, or other abstinence-based methods, which is all we've had really up until now,